Right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening on the fourth episode of Authentic Dialogues with Tato. We are finally doing the episode after delaying last week. It is a great pleasure that you're joining us this evening. Today, we are talking about authenticity and trust. So, we're talking about how authenticity influences trust. And I'm joined today by a very special guest, and you'll find out very soon why. Very, very special guest to me, and I'm very excited to be having this discussion with her. We're joined by Dr. Revelation Mukhele this evening. Dr. Mukhele is a chartered HR practitioner. She's a soroptimist, and she will tell us very shortly what does that mean. And she is a retired from lecturing in human resource management, in industrial psychology, and in career management. So I think it's just been over a year since she's retired, but she's extremely busy. I think a lot of people, when they're retired, they just don't rest. So welcome, Dr. Mukhele, and thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much, Tato. Thank you, viewers, for allowing me to join Tato on her talks. She's a very busy person.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. So Dr. Mukhele, in addition to the stuff that I introduced her, she's also somebody who I've known ever since I've known myself, because she is my aunt. So she's somebody who's seen me grow ever since I was young until I'm the person that I am today. And she and I talk about a lot of things, of course, since she's my aunt, but we've never had a discussion of this kind before. So we are hoping that both of us will behave ourselves and stick to the topic and be professional, because we're used to talking about so many things. But she's somebody who's very credible on the subject, somebody who's very knowledgeable. In fact, my sister and I used to gossip about her even before she had the title doctor. We used to call her doctor because she just knows so many things. So now she knows that my sister and I used to gossip about her. So Dr. Mukhele, tell us about this soroptimist role. What does that mean? It's a very interesting title. I think I'm one definitely curious, and I'm speaking on behalf of some people as well. I think they would be interested in knowing what this role and this title entails.
Thank you, Tato. Soroptimist International, it's an organization that started in America, but it's now international. And basically, it's loosely translated. It means best of sisters. It's an organization that concerned with the empowerment and education of women and girls. But through our various projects, when we get, let's say, to a school, we don't discriminate boys from girls. We serve both of them because we are mothers on the other hand. And we usually serve our poor communities. And most of the time, it's from our pockets, because sometimes you ask for sponsors and you don't get it, but we want to be involved in our society. Like during this pandemic, we've been busy with the PPEs in the maternity wards of our local hospital, Bophelong Hospital, and in our secure care for youth center. And also there's an early learning center that we have adopted, and we provided food and some cash to the staff because they didn't get anything during this time since March.
Wow, it sounds like a very important job that you're doing. I like the fact that you say when you get to a school, you don't just focus, although your main focus is on girls, but you also bring boys in. And that's a topic for another day. But I always feel that some of the societal issues that we have is because at home we raise boys differently to girls. So I think, we need to include them and raise them differently from a young age. As we say in our language, Setswana, that "Lori lo ojwa lo sa le metsi." So I really believe that it's an important job that you're doing. So thank you for that, Doc. So just to quickly introduce the topic for today, and let's dive straight into it. Really, as I said, we're talking authenticity and trust, and how authenticity really helps one to develop trust with others. So we know that authenticity is really about being true to oneself, to their values, and to their moral code. So being true to yourself make one consistent, right? Which is some of the subtopics around today's thing. It makes you really consistent, which then makes it easy for people to trust you. Because if you do one thing tomorrow, another tomorrow, and you say one thing and do differently, it's very difficult for people to build that trust with you. So that's one thing. And another is that building trust is an ongoing process, right? And as leaders in general, whether we are leaders in our homes, in our communities, or at work, we first need to establish the trust with people that we lead, or the people that we engage with in general. And then you need to go on and find ways to nurture this trust that you've actively built. Because the truth is, one cannot influence the people if they don't trust you. You simply won't get away with it. You won't go anywhere.
Definitely.
So my view is that trust is an action thing. You know, it is something that is earned. You don't just say that I want to be trusted. You need to earn it, and you earn it through actions, through doing things. So that is by way of introducing the topic for today. And I can see the doctor is already getting excited. She wants to jump in. And I'm happy because...
And I'm holding myself.
Because that is why we're having this discussion. So let me bring you in, Dr. Mokhele, as a retired chartered human resource practitioner. Why is building trust so important, and why is it so vitally important, especially in the field that you were in?
You know what, Tadu? You cannot expect people to be working with you, to rely on you, if you cannot be trusted. And there's no team that can be successful if there's no trust among the members. So it's very important, like you indicated, that there's that consistency. Think of a leader. Think of a leader that would change rules and everything, how they behave every day. Do you think the mission and vision and values that they say are there for the organization will be believed by the employees in that organization? They are going to say, here you are saying something, but it's something else when it comes to the usual information that comes from the organization. So it's very important, and you cannot expect people to depend on each other if they cannot trust each other. And where the bottom line is concerned, you are not even going to be able to reach it.
And you are right, because oftentimes leaders in businesses or business owners focus on this bottom line that you're talking about, but they don't consider these things that actually matter to build it. And I'm sure you've experienced it a lot as an HR practitioner, that HR practitioners struggle a lot because you are not bringing any income, you're not bringing any revenue to the business, you're not a revenue generating person. Your budget is the first to be cut if something happens. You are told that you're only focusing on the soft skills, and you have to convince people why those soft skills are very important. But I'm sure you also, I mean, in these challenges, what makes it real and practical? How do you convince people and other leaders in the organization to focus on such competencies? I would call them competencies, to focus on such competencies that they're just as important as other revenue generating functions in the business.
Being authentic, it's very important. Being authentic, we are referring to knowing yourself, knowing your values, and letting other people know your values, so that you become transparent. You become as reliable and as predictable as summer comes in December in this country, beautiful country of ours. And if people know that your word is your word, you walk the talk, then people will gravitate towards you, will start listening to you. And you also have to listen to people, because you are not working with books or logs or whatever. And it's that interaction that it's important, that is consistent, that involves honesty, that shows your authenticity. And that's what people want.
Mm. Transparency is important. I like that word, and I like it because it goes with one of the words we've discussed in our previous discussions around being vulnerable, and how being vulnerable is actually a strength as a leader rather than a weakness, because that is how you actually build trust. It's one of the things that help you to build trust with people. Now, how does building trust impact those around you?
When people that you'll do what you promise to do, or you carry out your responsibility, then they know that they can trust you and you can be able to be relied upon. And even those who are known to be untrustworthy will start, when they come to you, they behave differently. They start that trust. We don't know what would have made them untrustworthy. Maybe something might have happened in their lives before that. But in my experience, let me take my example as a lecturer in the Department of Industrial Psychology. I found that people from other departments, even from other faculties, will come to me, and I will say, why do you come to me? And they said, you know what? People have said, if you can go to Rev, she'll be able to advise you, or she'll be able to help you. And that's who am I.
So it's back to what I said earlier about how trust is something that it shows through your action, right? And it's something that you build over time, because I can't just see you today and I say I trust this person. Well, energetically it might be because something in my energy goes with yours, but practically we know that you will have to earn the trust, you have to build it, and that's how it impacts those people that are around you. But we also know that it's not a very easy thing to do. I mean, you made when you started answering this question, you said when you make a promise to people, right? And we all know that things happen in life. Like right now, COVID came and disrupted everything that we knew about how we do a lot of things, right? We had to relearn how to do things differently. And part of that was breaking promises on how we said we'll do things and stuff. How then do you navigate around that? How do you ensure that you still preserve that trust without really breaking the promise, if I can put it like that? Because it's quite a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. Communication is very important. Being transparent, being able to say, I promise to do this, but I tried 1, 2, 3, it's not working. What do you say? How can you help me carry out the promise that I said I will? So that it's a two-way process and the person can understand why you can't do it. And from the onset, if you are not going to do it, say so. So that the person is clear that you are not going to do it. And that's trust. The person knows. I know that if Tato says, I'm going to do this, he will do it. I'm talking about this Tato Belang.
That's the one next door. Yeah,
This
actually, Yeah, what you're saying is actually consistent with you in all aspects, in you as a mother, in the role as a mother that I know you very well in the family, the role that you play in our family. Because one thing that I've learned from, one of the many things that I've learned from you is, especially when it comes to children, that don't make a
Yes.
promise to children that you are not sure you're going to
Never,
keep. Right?
never.
I will not, because it's
Yes.
one of the things that I've always learned from you. And
Mm,
I think we can both agree that is true else everywhere else, not just with children.
mm,
Because then people are going to hold on to that promise. And when you
mm,
don't deliver, or when you break that promise, that's when that trust then gets broken. And we all
mm,
know that once the trust gets broken, it's even harder to
mm,
rebuild it than earning it in the first place. So how do you
mm.
see that whole narrative of don't make promises to children? How do you carry it through in the workplace, in our roles in leaders? Because we all know that there's lots of pressures in the
Yeah.
workplace, and
Mm,
sometimes there's a lot of unreasonable expectations. So yes, you want to keep all the lines of communications open. You want to be transparent, but there's so
mm,
many other expectations and the pressure, especially us as women in
mm.
corporate. How do you navigate that? How do you make sure that that promise you don't overpromise and underdeliver?
Yeah, it's always important to put the goal at the forefront so that everybody knows that we are working towards that goal. So that if anything happens, like the coronavirus has just impacted on everything that we do, then you forget about your personality, you kick out superiority complexes, and you just say, people, let's just focus on the goal, so that it's a teamwork.
Mm.
And if you have generated some team spirit, it won't, what can I say? It won't create negativity.
Mm.
It will say, you know what, she tried or we tried, and therefore we can go to plan B. I always talk about plan B, C, D, because life is not very easy,
Mm.
so that you maintain the trust, you maintain that
Mm.
authenticity. And some you win, some you don't. But at the end of the day, you have to maintain your integrity.
I think you've just sparked two questions in my mind when you said you maintain your authenticity and your integrity. Um,
Mm,
as I mentioned earlier, I've known
mm,
Dr. Mukhele ever since I knew myself. She knew me before I knew her, basically. but on a serious note, though, ever since I've known you, you've always been this, and that's one of the reasons that I've got you here this evening. You've always been this authentic, consistent person, right? So,
mm,
at family gatherings or everywhere else, when we're describing you, is exactly the same way. So that is
mm,
somebody who maintains their authenticity, irrespective of the situation or the circumstances. How do you achieve that? Because I think it's one of the very difficult things to do, because of,
mm,
as I said, the pressure outside in the community and society. There's ridiculous expectations, but also
mm,
the internal battles that we often, as an industrial psychologist, you would know that you
mm.
spoke about superiority complex. So we've got a lot of battles, internal battles that we are fighting and stuff. How did you, Dr. Mukhele, manage to keep your authenticity as pure as we know it for as long as I've known you?
Tato, respect for yourself and respect for others, will take you far. If you are kind, you are compassionate, you are open-minded, because not everything is black and white. And the goal of whatever you have to achieve is very important. You can be in a stock fail. You remind others, guys, our goal is this. It can be at a very formal organization. The goal is this. Like in the Soroctomist, I'm the program officer, program action officer. And I always remind people, guys, there can be these challenges. Let's forget about our personalities. This is the goal. If we can achieve the goal, we'll rise above all this toxicity, we'll rise above all these challenges, and we'll sleep better, because then you don't have any bundles that are, lying there, making you lie awake at night.
I love the sleep better, because I think I always say that it is, being authentic is one of the liberating things. I think I even said these words in my launch video. It is one of the liberating things, because you're not carrying this additional burden that you don't have to, because you are truly authentic to who you are and to yourself. But was it something that you were conscious about, that you had to be conscious about, to be like that? Or would you say, is it a learned behavior? Let me ask different. Is it a learned behavior, or is it something that you had, that you think you were just, that's who you are?
I would say mostly it's who am I? And as you grow in life, you meet people with different characteristics. You realize that some things you're not just going to win. So be peace with yourself. You pray and meditate, and you get, delivery out of whatever was bothering you, and you talk about it. Yeah, you talk about it because you are yourself.
Yeah, I look at you and you say it, you are so calm, and you say it with ease, and I know that because I'm the similar personality. I get it, but I also recognize that there's people who are just like, it's not easy. and when you say, you just talk about it, especially in an African context, definitely, we know that our brothers and our fathers, and we're not raised to talk about things, to talk about the emotions, to talk about what's bothering them, to be quite open about these things. So it might be difficult for them to do stuff that you're talking about.
Tato, emotional intelligence is very important. Try to understand the background from which this person is coming from. Try to walk in their boots, and then you'll be able to say, oh, this is why this person behaves like this, and this is how I can approach this person, so that we can be on the same page, so that they understand where I come from, and I also understand where they come from. And through communication and through respect, you are able to get listened to.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the practical ways of building trust that I hear you say. Really, it's you can't build a trust with a person if you are here and they're there and you want to impose on them. So I'm hearing you say that it's really about taking time to understand people. Firstly, acknowledging that we are different and we think differently from different backgrounds. And when you work with people, take time to really get to understand them, how they think, how they reason, what influences their behaviors, and then try and work together with them. And in that way, then you get to build trust, because you're being authentic and really trying to understand them and working with them.
And that also shows, if I can just jump in, and that also shows that you're not a threat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not a threat.
Sure. I think that's a very important statement, not a threat, because oftentimes, especially in the workplaces, we are threatened and we feel threatened. We are threatened all the time and we threat other people. So fear is something that drives us a lot. A lot of decisions and a lot of things are driven by fear. People put on facades, and we had spoken about facades in our first episode, I think, because of fear. And I love that, the fact that you're saying in that way, then you're not threatened. You become bare and authentic in who you are. So now, how do you overcome a toxic? I mean, you spoke about toxicity earlier on. How do you overcome a toxic workplace through authenticity or by being authentic?
If people can trust you, because you have been consistent, you have been honest about doing things, you go the extra mile for them, and they see that when you say it's not about us as individual, it's about a unit, whether it's a Stokvel, whether it's Soroptimist, whether it's a very formal organization, then people realize that, no, we are here to work. If I've got any bundles, I leave them at the gate. That's what I used to tell other staff members, to say, if there's something that is negative, leave it at the gate. Let's come and work. And then if we need to talk about it, we can go out to a neutral place where we can just talk about things.
But isn't it when you say, actually, I'm glad you said that, because then it brings a bit of a twist to this. When you say, and I can't remember the exact word you used, but burdens, for lack of that word, leave them outside. Isn't that now being contradictory to what we're talking about, which is about being authentic? Authentic, isn't it? I show up with all, of how I'm feeling, with all the stuff that I'm carrying. Isn't that being authentic? So how is leaving it in the gate helping us with this discussion of being authentic?
It could be we have a deadline, and that particular thing is not getting solved. So let's meet the deadline. And you might not want to, sometimes people don't want to talk among other people, but you'll be going on, then they'll throw in something. You'll be going on, then they'll be throwing something. And I'll say, because I was a leader, I will say, let's go somewhere neutral where you can just, talk about it and all that. By the time we get back to other people, we have ironed it, and if the person allows, we can just talk about it to say, hey, this person was bothered by ABC and we have fixed it. Or they want to talk, they are now ready to talk about it openly among the group.
So what I'm hearing you say is that context, it becomes important here, because
yes.
Okay, cool. So we're dealing with this, but then the context is it's irrelevant in this context, but you'd rather sort out before we bring this in so that the work can carry on. I'm hearing you say that it's contextual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So then that makes sense.
Yes.
And then Bill, talking about trust, I mean, you said something that I said earlier, that I'm seeing it as a practical way of building trust. Another practical way of building trust, which I know is also difficult for other leaders, is owning up to mistakes, right? We all know that everyone makes mistakes one way or the other. No one is perfect. The important part, especially as a leader, is owning up to your mistakes and acknowledging that you've made a mistake, and going public about it, and doing something. How has that worked for you in your experience? How do you see that as important, especially as you're trying to build authenticity and trust with people?
That particular area of owning up and explaining endears you to people, because they know that they can trust you. If you make a mistake, you acknowledge it. you own up to it. And then people know that if it's not you who made the mistake, it's not you. Even if somebody suspects that you have made that mistake, it builds trust. It builds trust.
How has that helped you or shown up in your experiences? How have you personally experienced it? Because I mean, sometimes you in a, as we say, between a rock and a hard place, you know, making that tough decision in how you're going to own up to this mistake. Because if you own up honestly and transparently, then it might land you into bigger trouble. And you know, and this is where the issue that you made, one of the things that you mentioned earlier as well, comes in, the issue of integrity. But how do you play that out?
In my experience, I would own up. I will go to whoever that I have to be accountable to with a remedy. I will say, oh, oops, I made a mistake, and therefore this is how I can remedy it. And then it depends, because you've built trust, you've been authentic. I've always been able to go through that particular storm. Yeah, because I'll say, I genuinely made a mistake. This is what happened. And this is how we can be able to remedy it.
It's like what the good...
Owning up helps, because otherwise everybody will be running around pointing fingers and you're not solving anything. The guilt will eat you up. So it's best to own up.
Yeah.
And it has worked even among my kids, because my kids, including Tatu, because I tell my kids, no matter how bad it is, tell me, and then we should be able to deal with that, and that should be a lesson. It becomes a lesson, and you're able to prevent similar future mistakes.
It's like what the good book says, the truth will set you free. And indeed, it becomes light. I mean, I've seen it as well in my life. I think as a teenager, it was much harder because, you know, with strict parents, with you guys didn't give us much leeway to make mistakes, or at least we thought that. Or at least that's what our interpretation was. But as you grow up, it really becomes, it's liberating. I once again, this word, it's light to just tell the truth. It's very difficult, but I think once you've done it, people also respect you. I think you build credibility because you build up. I mean, own up to your mistakes. But I like what you said. I think what I'm taking away from what you said is quite profound, that you own up to your mistake, but you said you will go with a remedy. Because for me, if you go with a solution, or how you can prevent it from happening again, for me, it means that you've thought about it. You've thought about the mistakes and what led you to the mistake, but you've also learned a great lesson and what is, you know what I mean? So you're finding a way to prevent it from happening, right? Because we all know that we can be finding ourselves in this virtual circle where you're going round and round in I'm sorry. I think there's nothing that's irritating than somebody apologizing for the same thing over and over and over and over. Because for me, then they're not being authentic. It's just they're just apologizing so that this egg, you know, it can go away, and they go and do the same thing again. So I love the fact that you say you yourself, who committed the mistake, who made a mistake, come up with a remedy, because it means you've really thought about it and you've learned something about it.
It's important.
Yeah. We're gonna be wrapping up in a few minutes. So I mean, we've discussed a lot of things that I think are important. I mean, I was just making some key themes or keywords that we discussed here. Things like consistency, and how being consistent builds trust. We've spoken about open lines of communication. Communication is also one of the things that I
One of
preach
the
every day.
basics. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know we haven't really spoken much about it. So if there's something that you want to end there, you're more than welcome to. And we also spoke about transparency. We spoke about respecting yourself and others. We spoke about owning up to mistakes and failures. So your views on communication and how open communication and effective communication helps to build trust.
It's one of the fundamentals of being authentic, because people know who you are, what you stand for, and people can be able to rely on you. I know that Dike Lady is a girl, but she won't wear dresses, and therefore I can't buy dresses for her. She wears pants right through, and it's who she is, and she has communicated that. So can you see the importance of communication? Because if we don't communicate, how do I know what Thato wants, what Thato doesn't want? So it's very important.
I always say, I always say that people confuse talking with communicating. Because
Yes,
everybody
thank you.
can talk, right? Everybody can.
Thank you
all of us can talk, but
for
communication.
saying that.
Yes. Okay, you can step in. You can come in.
Okay. Yeah, communication is, I relay a message. Do you understand the message the way it was intended? So that you can process it and you can act on it. When you talk to somebody and there's no okay, or there's no there's no, maybe facially non-verbal communication.
Yeah.
Then you say, what? Am I talking to a wall, or did I say something wrong? So like you say, it's important that you get feedback.
Yeah.
That we are on the same page.
Yeah, no, that's true. Because and you said exactly the magic word for me with communication versus talking. There's an intent behind that communication, and there's an expected outcome in that communication. Whether it's acknowledgement, whether it's a response and it's an answer or a decision, but there's an intention when you communicate. So therefore, you need to make sure that you are clear in your communication. You put the other person in your shoes. The messaging that you're sending across is going to be so in communication is not an easy thing, because you need to put yourself in the other's shoes to say, is what communicating going to be received in the way that I'm intending the message to be? If I receive the same message, how would I interpret it? So there's a lot of thinking in that.
Yes.
And for me, then authenticity comes in, because you become authentic. People can even see if you're inauthentic in your communication, whether it's verbal and non-verbal. I think is the most authentic one, right? We all know that we communicate mostly 90% of what we say is through non-verbal communication, even before we say anything. So I think it's a crucial part of building that. But I think now we're getting carried away with communication. and we need to start wrapping up our session. I have thoroughly enjoyed this evening conversation. I would give us an 8.5 out of 10 in terms of being, I said earlier that Dr. Mokhele is my aunt, and she and I are used to having 10 conversations in 1 minute. And I had to be very strict with her and myself as well, to make sure that we get structure and stuff. So I would give us 8.5 out of 10. I think we did quite well.
Yes, thanks.
compared to our normal conversations.
Mm.
But I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I truly hope that there's something, even if it's just one thing, that you either learned or that sparked some thinking in your mind as you're going about your day, as you're going about your other stuff that you need to do. Dr. Mokhele, thank you so much for spending your time with me this evening. I know that you had connectivity issues this afternoon when we were testing, and I think God has just been gracious to us that we had a smooth conversation. So, any closing words before we say goodbye and close the session?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tatu, for this session. All I can say for people out there is that, quoting Oscar Wilde, the Irish poet, is be yourself, everyone else is taken. Thank you.
Wow. Be yourself, everyone is taken. And I think truly that's how you live your life, Doc. And yeah, those are nice closing words. Be yourself, everyone else is taken. I always say that when you try and be like somebody else, you really just insulted yourself and your creator. But yeah, so this bring us to the end of episode 4. As I said, I hope that you've taken something out of this. Let's continue with the dialogue on my Facebook page. Let's continue everywhere else. From me and Doctor, it has been an absolute pleasure having you, and good evening to you all.
Thank you so much. Night.
Thank you. Night.